You want to do a podcast? Come on, let's do a podcast. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Batman. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair, returning from our 80s bracket, we have Ron West.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here. Looking forward to recording with you and my brother from another mother.
And, of course, he speaks of the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback, Mr. Tim Williams.
What kind of world do we live in where a 6-foot bat gets more press than I do? This town needs an enema.
There you go. I was trying to find out a way to parody that one for my opening.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm glad you at least got to
And the funny thing
it.
was, I almost did. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. But you used that one, so that worked out.
All right. So we, if you did not tune in last week, and again, we're spoiling it right now, so hopefully you did. If you did not tune in last week, we broke down all of the superhero comic book movies. Again, not just superhero, but comic book movies that came out in the 80s and television shows, I guess, or television movies. Mm-hmm. Not shows, but television movies. And we broke it down to decide which one was the best. And although Superman 2 fought humbly.
Valiantly.
Yeah, Batman took the win. It's not a disappointment for me. No. Batman 89 especially is such a great movie, and that's what we're here to talk about. So we're going to talk about Batman 89, but before we get into it, I'm going to throw back the curtain a little bit. We are recording this the day after the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And during the Super Bowl, we got the greatest trailer for The Flash that I have ever seen, which, if anything, tells us that with enough time, Michael Keaton's Batman can make us forget that Ezra Miller kidnapped people.
Maybe not forget, but we'll let it slide for this one.
We'll definitely forgive for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm not going to the movie to see Ezra Miller.
Absolutely
I'm going to that movie.
No.
You know what? I'm even going to see Supergirl. That was a great introduction for Supergirl, too. And part of me wonders, is there anything they're not showing us?
God, they have to be. I mean, they've got to hold something. If they haven't learned anything from Marvel, and here we go with the DC Marvel comparison, but I mean, Marvel's not going to show you everything, so DC better not.
Or they're throwing us off the trail and none of them are actually in the movie.
Yeah, there you go. It'd be great.
It's just Ezra Miller in Hawaii wandering around to different people's homes in the middle of the night.
No. Part of me wonders, though, is Michael Keaton playing Bruce Wayne, or is he playing Thomas Wayne? Because they are doing the Flashpoint storyline, and that's what happens in Flashpoint, is that Batman is Thomas Wayne.
Well, you see the 89 Batmobile as well. Yeah. So
yeah, I don't know. And and then they switch, Clark with Kara. Mm-hmm. So they are making changes to the Flashpoint storyline, but I really do hope it is Michael Keaton. It is Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne, right? Michael
Keaton's Bruce Wayne. And then part of me also wonders: do we get to see Michael Keaton's Batman meet Batfleck?
Yeah, that was the question I had too. Are the two Batmans going to have an interaction like the two Flashes did?
So I'm excited about that. So I couldn't help it. I had to bring it up since we're here talking about Batman. And now here we are in, 2023. We are about to see this Batman return. No pun intended. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the 1989 Batman. And of course, a lot of this is probably going to be a rehash. We've done this show. The three of us have done this show before for the 80s Flick Flashback. So I will rehash some of the same stuff, but of course when we get to the moving panel section, we'll focus a lot more on the comics that inspired this one, or possibly were an inspiration for this one. We'll get into that. But let's first break down a few things about the movie. Ever since I found out who Michael E. Uslan was, the man has just been fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who didn't listen to, I think I first mentioned him in the Swamp Thing episode.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Michael E. Uslan purchased the film rights to Batman and Swamp Thing from DC in October of 1979. So
what
following this, yeah. Well, again, from what I've read, it was he went after Batman and they just offered him Swamp Thing.
Of course they did.
Yeah. And so this is right off the success of Superman the movie in 78. Things were big, so DC was going, all right, let's see who else can get a movie made. And Michael Uslan got Batman and Swamp Thing in 1979. But Uslan wanted to break out of the Adam West show. That was the only Batman. Well, not the only. We had the movie serials back in the 40s. But that was the most modern take on Batman we had in terms of television and movies. And Uslan wanted to go back and make, as he quoted, the definitive, dark, serious version of Batman the way Bob Kane and Bill Finger had envisioned him in 1939. A creature of the night stalking criminals in the shadows. And I am so glad he did.
Yes.
That's all I can say. So glad he did. Nothing against Adam West and his Batman. There's always a special place in all of our hearts for that Batman. But what I was surprised to find out that Uslan actually wrote a script, like what he wanted. And he titled it The Return of the Batman. Mm-hmm. That is not, I couldn't find any more about that script, like what his plan was. What I did find out was that once it really got going at Warner Brothers, the original screenplay was written by Tom Mankiewicz, who was a consultant for the Superman movies. Right. So he started writing it. His was titled The Batman, which of course is the most recent movie we got. And his idea was to do it like, hey, look, if Superman works so well, let's do it just like Superman. So the idea was for it to be this big epic movie, to follow Bruce from childhood, so from the crime alley murders with his parents to becoming Batman. So I guess you would have the first 45 minutes of the movie, just like Superman, where it takes him to become Batman. But his version also included Robin and Robin's origins. He did have the Joker as a villain. He also had Rupert Thorne from the comics. He had him as a villain. And instead of Vicky Vale, he used the infamous Silver St. Cloud as Batman's love interest, or Bruce Wayne's love interest, whichever way you take it. We'll get into a little bit more about how that changed when we get into the moving panels. Because like I said, we'll spend a little bit more time on some of that. We may hit it some along the way as well. But the movie took, of course, several rewrites until eventually we got the movie that we have released June 23rd, 1989. And again, I know we talk about this on your show, but I'm going to ask you here for my show. Did you guys see this in theaters?
Absolutely. Saw it opening night at the movie theater in Titusville with my buddy Jeff from high school, and we liked it so much we went back the next night and saw it again. Now, to be fair, Jeff on the back window of his pickup truck had a giant Batman insignia, so we were probably in, before the movie had even come out. But opening night at the theater in Titusville, and the next night as well. Over the course of the summer, I probably saw it 4 times. I was every girl I was asking out, and she was saying, "Yeah." I was saying, "Hey, we can go see Batman." Taking him to the movie.
Yeah, I saw this in the theater. I don't remember the name of the theater, but I remember where it was. It was behind a Turtles music outside of South Lake Mall in Morrow, Georgia. Yeah, I dated myself there, didn't I? But I remember that is one of the movie experiences that I remember being in a packed theater. I remember the opening of, the music and the sweeping camera and wondering like all these turns and curves, what it's going to be. And then when it, it came out at the end and it was the bat signal, or the logo. Yeah. I was hooked immediately. Like, this is the greatest movie I have seen, am seeing, and will ever see, at that point. And so I loved every minute of it. I think I saw it. I don't know if I saw it 4 times. I definitely saw it a second and maybe a third time again that summer. Because with it coming out in June, I think it stayed in the theater like all through the summer. So whenever there was a lull of like new releases, like, well, let's go back and see Batman again on a Friday or Saturday. and saw it a couple of times. And I remember getting the VHS when it came out. It was one of the first, VHSs they made available for like $20, because most VHSs before that were like 60,
70, 80,
yeah, like very expensive. So it was one of the first, like, they made that VHS to be owned, not just to be rented, and that was like a super big deal. So, but yeah, it was it's always fun to go back and rewatch it like I did today. And so, but it's hard to recapture that movie theater experience of the first time on the big screen.
I should have actually listened back to your episode to see what I said, because I don't know if I saw it in theaters. Part of me thinks maybe I did, but at the same time, our movie theater was one of those that we didn't get movies until like maybe a month or two after they had been released.
Okay.
We had one of those like $1.50 little twin cinemas. There were just two screens. So I may have, but I mean, I was 8 when the movie came out. So there's also the likelihood that I did. I just made Ron feel old.
I just turned 51. I'm the old guy on the podcast for sure.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I did see it. Like I said, it was maybe a few months later. If not, it was one of those, summer, matinee movies. Because part of me does think I did see this in theater before it came out to rent. I'll go ahead and date like you did, Tim, before I could rent it from a Blockbuster. But and I know we talked about this in the one shot last week. But yeah, the marketing campaign for this was something I definitely remember.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, the billboards that were just the Batman
logo. Yeah, that was it.
And I mean, that's all the poster was, which we talked about last week. I mean, how many movies can you sell off of just a logo? Like nothing, there's no names. I mean, even though you got Jack Nicholson, who gets top billing, huge star, at the time, you get no names. You don't know that it's a Tim Burton film. You don't know, that Michael Keaton's playing Batman. You just got the Batman logo, and that's all you needed. Batman logo and June 23rd. Like that was it. And everybody went and saw it.
Oh yeah.
Let's go ahead and get into the characters, and of course we'll start off with Batman, who we've talked about several times before, so everybody knows this by now. First debuted in Detective Comics number 27 in May of 1939. So almost a year after Superman. So these are the godfathers of comics and superheroes. Created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. So glad that he eventually finally got credit for his participation in this. And so, and again, let's talk about this. Played by Michael Keaton. Fresh off of Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Mr. Mom. All of his, the Dream Team, one of my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Here we have 5'10" Michael Keaton.
Ish.
playing 6'2",
right? Bruce
Wayne, Batman.
Gotta love those lifts in the boots.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of controversial. Way before the internet, there were still people making their voices heard of why in the world are they casting Michael Keaton. So with you gentlemen, with you elders, being a little bit older than me, what do y'all remember about hearing about Michael Keaton being Batman?
So I'll tell you, I had an older cousin. He's passed away now, named Stevie, who was about 3 or 4 years older than me, who was really into comics for the collection aspect and really loved Batman. So when I started reading comics, collecting comics in the early 80s, it was just to read and just to enjoy. But he was really into the collection aspect. When this movie came out in 1989, he was not happy. He was not. He verbalized that every time I saw him at a family gathering, that he couldn't believe it was Michael Keaton. It didn't matter to me. I loved Mr. Mom, so I loved Michael Keaton, and I was excited to watch it. But as a diehard, by that time, we got Frank Miller's, comics, which are, the graphic novels, The Dark Knight, and that's skewed more towards, a more mature audience. And he, my cousin at this point is early 20s. And so he's kind of digging that type of Batman. and I think he wanted someone with a more edge and more hard. So I distinctly remember that, him and his friends being very upset and talking about boycotting the movie, not going to the movie, and things like that. Whereas me, as a little 17-year-old, was just happy to go see Michael Keaton.
It's just Batman, yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as big of a deal to me.
Did he ever say who he would have rather played Batman?
Let me think while Tim is answering, and I'll circle back to me, because I know he did, but it'll take me a minute.
Yeah, so I remember the controversy. I don't remember it as well as I probably should, but I remember there being I was a big fan of Entertainment Tonight and watching whatever before you had 24-hour news channels and that kind of stuff. I was a pretty big watcher of Entertainment Tonight, so I remember the stories about them not excited about it. And I remember when I first heard it, I was like, Michael Keaton, because like I said, Mr. Mom, Beetlejuice, Gung Ho. I knew him as a comedic actor. That's really all I knew him as. And so I was like, well, but then too, as not someone who was in the comics really as much, but I remember the Adam West Batman. I was like, oh, well, it must be going to be that same kind of silly, campy, type of movie. But then you see the trailer and it's like, well, that doesn't look like it's going to be like that at all. So it was kind of like, that is an interesting choice. And it was funny, even watching it today, I sometimes forget that Beetlejuice was before Batman. He literally went from Beetlejuice to Batman. That's two very different characters. And of course, he did more dramatic work. He did Clean and Sober, which was a big dramatic turn for him. Mm-hmm. I think around
My Life. It's one that a lot of people don't remember.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But
that's from I think that's early 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he definitely could do serious acting, but that's just not what he was known for. So it was a big, even for me as a under 16-year-old kid, it was 13 or 14 at that point. It was a little strange, but I was in for it. And even Jack Nicholson as a Joker, I didn't really know much about Jack Nicholson. As a teenager, his movies weren't something that I remember being a big fan of. I never seen Chinatown. I think I'd seen Terms of Endearment. So it was like thinking of Jack Nicholson as the Joker was even a little bit of a interesting take as well. So, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
And it was Tom Selleck that he wanted, and it was because of the physical component of Tom Selleck that he
being tall.
The role. Right. I don't know that Magnum PI is striking a lot of fear into people in and of himself, but it was the dark features and the more physical, imposing size that he wanted.
I don't know, but that mustache underneath the cowl wouldn't have been great. I actually watched a clip. You mentioned Adam West. I actually watched a clip of Adam West talking about the casting, and he was almost offended that he was not offered the job.
Yeah, I remember that story too, yeah.
But dude was 60 when when the movie came out. I mean, look, I know that that's not a big deal nowadays. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got freaking Paul Rudd playing Ant-Man, and that man's like 120 at this point.
Hey. And Harrison Ford's coming back to Indiana Jones again in his, what, is he 80 yet?
It's something, yeah.
Close.
Right.
I will, we mentioned the Super Bowl. I will mention that Super Bowl ad was very lacking.
Yeah.
So I'm a little worried about this one. I don't want another Crystal Skull.
Yeah, I've been worried ever since they announced it. I was like, really?
When the trailer ended, the young lady that was watching the Super Bowl with me, there was silence in the room, and then she just went, "Why?" And I did just what y'all did. I just looked at her and laughed. I was like, that is a great question.
Yeah, I'm really hoping the dial of destiny is not the dial to turn to watch something else. But I don't know if we've ever talked about this before when we have talked about Keaton and this movie. But I found out that they wanted an unknown because that's what worked for Superman. Christopher Reeve was a relative unknown at the time. Mm-hmm. And I found out that they went after Willem Dafoe.
I think we did. I think his name did come up in the original Batman episode that we did, but we didn't talk about it too in depth. So,
how do you think that would have worked?
I don't know about the physical.
Part of me thinks Willem Dafoe should be Joker.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. I mean, the acting aspect of Willem Dafoe would have been fine. Have been able to carry the grieving, brooding part of Batman. But yeah, I agree. Now that you say that, he'd be a great Joker.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about most people who have known Dafoe from Platoon.
Yeah.
And so that is I mean, if you're going dark and brooding, I mean, he definitely from that movie could give that kind of performance. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. I don't know if it would work.
Do we know why it didn't work out? If they wanted him and went after him, why did it not?
I don't think. I think there was just I don't remember what I read. I didn't write it down. But
I want to think it was Burton. I think Burton's choice was Keaton just because they had done Beetlejuice.
Yeah, he worked with him.
I think, and two, Burton he had done he'd done Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, so his budgets and scale were getting larger. So when you take on that type of project, you want someone that you've worked with that can kind of, you don't have to worry about, and you already got Nicholson, so you're gonna have to kind of rein him in at some point. So he made. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but I know at one point Ivan Reitman was working on a Batman as well with Bill Murray.
Bill Murray and Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, as Robin.
Yeah. I really want to know if there's validity to that, though. That sounds like there's no way that's true.
But I kind of want to see that movie.
Yeah.
At least the trailer. Can I at least see the trailer for that movie?
Part of me just wants to ask: is Keaton the best Batman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Moving on.
No hesitation.
Yeah, no hesitation. Because for those of you who've listened to the show since the beginning, one of our first episodes was me and Blake deciding best Batman, and that was before I thought a third person would be useful. So it was just me and Blake, and we came down to Keaton versus Bale, and we probably could have argued all day about it, but I had to give in, so it wasn't just so the episode wasn't just going to keep going. And we decided on Bale, but I have always regretted that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you need to do an all-star episode with every person that you've recorded with and bring us all in. We have a Royal Rumble for who's the best Batman.
All right, so let's move on to the Joker, Jack Nicholson, who gets top billing. Mm-hmm. I think that was like part of his contract that he would get top billing, but I always love that. I always talk about how Christopher Reeve was third billed on the Superman movie, and here we have Michael Keaton being second bill over Jack Nicholson. So the villains get top bill in superhero movies back then. The Joker debuted in Batman #1 in April of 1940. He also created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, but they also had help from a 17-year-old Jerry Robinson. Love when I hear about teenagers being involved in the creation of these iconic characters.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The name of Jack Napier did not come from the comics. That's created just for this movie. I kind of was curious where maybe the name Jack Napier came from. I couldn't find anything exact, although I found the word jackanapes, which, that's a word no one uses. But I found the word, sir. Yeah, I found the word jackanapes, which the definition for that is it's a word that is used to identify a rude person or a tame monkey.
Okay.
So maybe someone.
I think that's a stretch.
Maybe, okay.
Big stretch.
It's just the Batman villains, their actual names, and I know there's a big deal of no one actually knows the Joker's name. Chad and I talked about that during our Joker episode. And I know this, but with Batman villains, you've got Victor Freeze, who becomes Mr. Freeze. you've got Edward Enigma, and it's just almost like it's just obvious that what their villain character is going to be. So part of me wondered, did they not try something like that? Here was another thing, though, just to throw this one out. Could he have been named Jack? Maybe referring to, like a jester, the Jack in like maybe the deck of cards, is more like the jester. Mm-hmm. I know a Joker is another card, but
right.
maybe using another card and using the name Jack. And could maybe Napier be a reference to the actor that played Alfred in the 60s Batman, whose name is Alan Napier?
Yeah, it's an interesting place to put an homage, though.
I mean, because you can't change anybody else's name to do any type of homage.
Yeah. And
he probably, Tim Burton probably did not want to acknowledge Adam West. So I don't know. It's just thoughts. But here's the question I want to ask you guys. What are your thoughts on Joker being the one who killed the Waynes?
When I saw this in the movie, and I saw that, and again, I had some Detective Comics, and it was also a separate Batman comic at the time, just called Batman. I liked that. Again, my older cousin was not happy with that mythology and tying it all up. I thought it was a great way to kind of bring it full circle at the time, and I still enjoy it when I watch it now. So I didn't have an issue with it. And as I've gotten older and we see the movies take all kinds of liberties with the source material from the comics, we see things like this more frequently. I had no issue with it. I liked that added aspect of the two of them connected. I mean, two characters. I'm not sure there's a villain and superhero more connected than Batman and Joker, and so I just felt like that tied them together a little bit more.
Yeah, it didn't bother me watching it as a kid. Of course, at 13, you haven't seen as many movies. And
they hadn't run the death of the Waynes into the ground.
Right, exactly. It's like the more I, seeing
my least favorite part of Batman movies.
Right. Yay, another Batman movie to watch the Waynes die again. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. I'm like Ryan. It doesn't really bother me now. I think it bothers me in other movies where it's that it seems more it's more convenient. But with that probably being one of the first movies that I saw that kind of tied things together that way, it didn't bother me. It made it a little bit more compelling at the time. So,
what about you?
Anything? Go ahead.
I gotta say I'm not a fan of it. I like the Joe Chill aspect. But again, I also like the mystery of the Joker, like him not having any background. I mean, obviously they would later give him the Red Hood background, right? Which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I don't want him. I don't want anything to be known about him from before being the Joker. Really.
Yeah, one thing about watching the movie this time, and maybe we talked about it before, maybe I didn't remember, but it's funny because this movie is really more of the origin of the Joker than it is about the origin of Batman, because you see the beginning is really all about the Joker and how Jack Napier becomes the Joker because of Batman, and you get a flashback scene of the Waynes and Bruce's childhood, but that's all a mystery up until that point. But I even liked how I like the little not tease, but the red herring that Burton did, or the writers did at the beginning of this one, to have it start with the couple coming out of the theater like, oh, here we go, this is going to be it. And it's not. It's, it's
as soon as she goes, Harold, where are we? I'm like, okay.
It's not them, It's
not Thomas Wayne.
Right.
Yeah.
But
they already don't look like they're the Waynes.
No. But still,
she's not wearing a pearl necklace. That's
that we see fall in slow motion.
Oh my God!
In the raindrops.
That's a great point though, Tim, about it being a Joker origin more so. I wonder if that. I mean, Jack is top billing, like you said. So the character is taking top billing as well.
Yeah, no, I won't disagree with that. It's definitely a little bit more Joker centered in terms of story. So apparently I found out, so his partner that's in that flashback scene, apparently he's supposed to be Joe Chill.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. There was a something in like a script or a deleted scene or something, and he's supposed to be Joe Chill, and so, but they don't refer to him by name or anything in the actual movie. I don't know. I think there's certain things you don't mess with when it comes to the comics, and as much as I don't like seeing the Wayne's death over and over again, I think the Wayne's death is one of those things you just don't mess with. And so I don't like it. Let's talk about the look of the Joker. So, they're very much going for the classic look of the purple suit, the green hair, the makeup, the 60s, the 50s, 60s, really Joker look. I even think they took some of the idea from the Laughing Fish storyline from the 70s, because it's in that one. I think it's the first time you see Joker wearing kind of the trench coat and the fedora, which I know Nicholson's not really wearing a fedora. He's got, I don't know what you would call that type of hat that he wears. What did you think about the fact that his henchmen are wearing the like comic book Joker logo, but when they show that logo on like the commercial, it's a Jack Nicholson looking Joker? Like, what'd you think about the inconsistency of that cartoon logo of the Joker?
Yeah,
or did you even catch it?
I noticed it today. I mean, once again, because this most recent time I watched it, I don't know if I noticed it before. I don't think I noticed it was different in the commercial, but I did laugh. It made me chuckle when I first saw one of the henchmen wearing the old comic logo, and I was like, it's interesting that you would want to wear a jacket with your boss's cartoon version on it, But then, there's many parts of this movie that's like, it is very comical and very kind of farce-ish.
Yeah.
So it works in the context, but it was interesting. Like, that was an interesting choice that, yes, the Joker on his jacket does not look like the Joker in the movie.
Doesn't look like Jack Nicholson, yeah.
Are you implying that everyone that works at Tesla does not have a cartoon Elon Musk insignia pin that they wear around on their...
I'm sure he wants them to, but I don't know.
Yeah. No,
yeah, we shouldn't suggest that and throw that out.
It's probably in a memo somewhere.
Yeah, not at Tesla. Maybe at Twitter, but...
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I ever noticed the difference until you just said that, Laramy. I always liked the cartoon throwback one that they were wearing. I don't think I noticed the difference in the commercial that it was Jack.
Yeah. No, the one in the commercial, and I even think it's the one on the side of the helicopter is the one that's made more to look like Jack Nicholson.
Oh, okay.
But no, the one on their jacket is clearly the comic book Joker. But just throwing a couple of things that I like that they added in from the comic book Joker. The comic book Joker is a neat freak, and they kind of imply, they don't show it too much, but they imply that so is this Joker, especially Jack Napier before he was the Joker. And then, of course, I mean, how many times have you seen the Joker hijack the TV signal? And so that is just Joker trope, and I love that he does it. Although I find it so funny that when he does it, when they're making the press conference about the 200-year celebration, that they make it look like they're actually looking at the Joker on the monitor. Like Joker's on one side and they're from in front of the steps of City Hall. And when he cuts in, they actually all turn and facing. And so it looks like they're looking at him. All right, moving on. Let's knock out some of these other characters. Vicky Vale from the comics, first Batman 49 from October of 48, also created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Oh, and by the way, this was the same issue of Batman that introduced the Mad Hatter. So Vicky Vale and the Mad Hatter introduced in the same issue. But this character was actually she's from the comics, but she was more fleshed out in the old Batman movie serials.
Okay.
So you had Vicky Vale, but she's a photographer. So, I mean, they kept the character the way it is. Of course, here played by Kim Basinger. And I don't mind Kim Basinger in this. I will say this. I will say this one negative thing. I do not like the way she screams.
Yeah, her scream is piercing.
I don't think she was cast for her screaming ability.
No.
But it's even worse in the, because in Prince's Bat Dance, he samples a lot of parts of the movie, and every time the scream comes up in the song, it's like, he could have left that part out. All the other sound bites are cool, but that was a little much.
And the one that gets me the most is when Joker talks about like shooting himself. I forgot his exact line. And the little bang flag comes out, and the way she screams there, well, she
kind of screams the same in all of them, which makes them all seem like the same intensity when they really should be.
True, but it's the fact that she's in that kind of sedated state that she's in, and then she just snaps, screams, and then goes back to the sedated state.
Right.
I don't know. But what were your thoughts of Kim Basinger in this love interest role, who they just nonchalantly go ahead and say, oh, hey, well, you know what? You'll figure out Bruce Wayne as Batman.
As a kid, it didn't bother me. I mean, I thought, she was pretty to look at as a 13-year-old. It was nice to see her. As I've gotten older, I haven't appreciated her character as much. And I don't think she necessarily brings anything to the character to make it any more appealing. So, and I know she was a last minute replacement for was it
Sean Young?
Sean Young, which I don't know if Sean Young would have been any better. She might have been. She's probably a better actress, I think.
My only worry with Sean Young is Sean Young has. I think you need someone that's blonde, which Sean Young is not. But I would worry that Sean Young would be too much of a Lois Lane type character.
Yeah, I see that. Because she's a little bit more of a strong-willed type of person. She typically plays more strong-willed characters, where this Vicky Vale is not that. She's very much the damsel in distress in most of the movie.
I would be afraid that Sean Young would come across as Vicky Vale, as someone that could beat up Michael Keaton as Batman.
Right.
And that's not good for the story.
Yeah, I don't have they. Okay, Maggie Gyllenhaal. I think that is the only time that the Batman Bruce Wayne love interest has actually worked.
Yeah, she was really good.
Yeah.
And I am saying Maggie Gyllenhaal because it didn't work the movie before with Katie Holmes.
Yeah, I was trying to remember her name.
Playing the same character.
Yeah. Yeah, she was probably. I agree with you. She was probably the best of them. Yeah.
But
it definitely didn't work with Nicole Kidman.
No, I've never been a Nicole Kidman fan anyway. I would argue that it works with Maggie Gyllenhaal because she's the best actress of the ones that we've mentioned. And so that's probably why it works the best.
All right. Then we've got our, I guess he was meant to be comic relief, Alexander Knox, played by Robert Wuhl. The character was made for the movie. He's not from the comics.
Right.
He did reprise the character on the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths when they showed a shot from Earth 89, and he's sitting on a bench reading a newspaper that talks about Batman, and it said Batman captures Joker, which also implies the Joker did not die in this movie. What were your thoughts on Robert Wuhl's investigative reporter role that really kind of fell on Vicky Vale's character's lap?
He definitely wanted to be on Vicky Vale's character's lap. As he follows around like a little puppy.
The inappropriate things he says in this movie.
Right.
With a twinkle in his eye at every turn. I've always liked Robert Wuhl. I liked him in Bull Durham as well, the small part that he had there. A lot of small part that he has, and I think he makes the most of those. So I'm always happy when I see him in a movie. I don't know that the character was necessarily important to have. Don't know that he accomplishes a whole lot other than, as you said, a little comic relief.
Yeah, I think that's really all he's there for, I think, is the comic relief. And he's kind of somewhat of a sounding board for Vicky Vale and some of her trying to figure out who Bruce Wayne is. I mean, that's really his only role. But he was funny. I mean, he plays the part, he plays the role well. Whether the role is really necessary or not is another question. But he was funny. I liked him. That's why I used one of his lines for my intro. So.
Well, again, and I think that I think in some of the original scripts, he was supposed to be more of a Jimmy Olsen, like he was buddy with Batman. Because one of the things I read was there was supposed to be something at the end where Knox actually puts on the costume so that Bruce Wayne can escape.
Yeah, that's in the comic book adaptation, because I think we talked about that on my episode, where at the very, like, they think that Batman falls as well as the Joker, and then when they get down there, they find Knox under the tarp or whatever, and because they all think, oh, we're gonna find out who Batman is, and it's Knox instead. And he was like, and then you see him telling Vicky, he's like, oh yeah, I've been friends with Batman. He told me the whole plan. I was here, that kind of thing. Yeah. So.
All right, then we have Pat Hinkle as Commissioner Gordon, the only actor other than Alfred, Michael Gough, who I think appeared in all four of these Batman movies. Of course, Commissioner Gordon also appeared in the first not the first Detective Comics, but the first comic with Batman, Detective Comics 27. Excuse me. Anything y'all want to say about Pat Hinkle?
He was good for what he did.
Yeah.
What can be said?
Not the best.
Hasn't already been said by all those Pat Hinkle fans out there clamoring the message board.
Yeah. Then, as I just mentioned, we got Alfred Pennyworth, played by Michael Gough, or Gough, however you pronounce his last name. That character, although there's a lot of, is it the same Alfred? Batman 16 from April of 1943, created by Don Cameron and Bob Kane, but that Alfred was named Alfred Beagle. The name Pennyworth wasn't used until 1969. He also didn't look the same. He was overweight. He was clean shaven. But he was still the butler. So it actually wasn't until the movie serial that he got the look that we're used to. And that was because of the actor that played him. And so, then we have that. Then the only other person I care to talk about, because I'm not going to talk about Bob. Unless y'all want to.
You're my number one guy.
Yeah. But the only other person I want to talk about is the person that they screwed over. Billy D. Williams.
Harvey Dent.
Lando.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Billy D never getting his opportunity to actually be Two-Face? Until the comic. They did redeem it in the comic many, many years later, but Billy D himself never got to...
I think he got to voice Two-Face in the Lego Batman movie, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was another redeem.
I was disappointed in the movies when he did not get to. Love Billy D. Williams. Obviously, Lando Calrissian, who I referenced a few minutes ago. Lady Sings the Blues. So I've always liked him as an actor and was excited for him to reprise that role. I've never looked it up to research to see if he wasn't available or they just decided to go in a different direction.
Oh, they just definitely went in a different direction with
Tommy Lee Jones.
With Tommy Lee Jones, which is one of the reasons why I think they have officially said that Forever and Batman and Robin take place in a different universe from the first two movies. They're not technically from the same universe. Even though you got
Pat Hinkle in.
Yeah, you got Alfred and Commissioner Gordon being the same, but whatever. All right, so ending our character section, let's ask the question. So of all these characters, and we did get to see a lot of these characters again, but specifically the ones that were from the Batman 1998, who did you want to see more of? And who do you wish would have the pearls from their necklace fall in slow motion as their lifeless body collapses in front of their 10-year-old son?
It's very descriptive. I'll go first since Ron's laughing at the question. Of the ones we talked about, it's probably Knox, and not because I don't like Robert Wool. I just think his character is highly unnecessary. So that's That's all I got.
Yeah. I think we all agree the one we want to see is the one we're going to see. Michael Keaton playing Batman again.
Oh, yeah,
right. Yeah. That's absolutely the one I wanted to see more of, and wish he would have been Batman through all 4 of those movies. I think it's I think we look at those movies differently if somehow they could work that out with him and he maintains the Batman role, Bruce Wayne role through those first 4. And for me, the rip the pearls and get rid of them is probably is probably Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale. I just think someone else could have done a better job with that role. And then the character itself is, as one of you stated earlier, just such a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
And I tend to not like those characters anyway.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's one we didn't even mention. I didn't really understand the purpose other than he's the catalyst for Jack, but Grissom.
Oh yeah.
Like
Jack
Palance. As great as Jack Palance is, but
he's barely in it. I mean, he's that forgettable, and that character is that forgettable that you have to, like, every time I rewatch it, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that he's in this movie, and he's gonna die in about 5 minutes.
I honestly think if you just took Jack Napier, made him a mobster, and then did the stuff that they were doing with the dirty cop with Englehart, I think you still could have done, this Jack Napier story, this Joker background, and you just didn't need Grissom, who was just, I mean, his acting in this is horrible. It's atrocious. I mean,
well, that's why Jack Nicholson parodied it when he did.
Yeah,
he was imitating him when he did the whole "Bob, you're number one guy."
Yeah. You're my.
Yeah, he does the breathing and everything.
The breathing. Hilarious. Yeah. Okay.
But you brought up Englehart, like, he's probably my least favorite character of everybody, and of course he's not in it very much. But like, I really, I mean, you want to have a dirty cop, but he's just. He was my least favorite. He's always been my least favorite character. So if I can change my answer, that's my answer.
And what's funny is now that we've had all the other Batman stuff we have, when you go back, when he's first introduced, part of me forgets who he is for a second, and I think he's Bullock.
Yeah.
I think he's Harvey Bullock.
Oh, yeah.
Nah, I mean, okay, whatever. But yeah, let's just give us, as long as we get Michael Keaton back as Batman, we're all happy. Yeah.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.
All right, let's get into the moving panels. I've already talked about the laughing fish. I want to talk about it again, though, because a big thing of the laughing fish is Joker is poisoning people with a toxin that puts a smile on their face when they die.
Agreed.
And again.
Yeah. Sorry.
So this was something that kind of surprised me, but it's true. He is the only live-action Joker to actually kill people with a smile toxin, which just seems like a Joker thing.
Right.
But yeah, he's the only live-action Joker to do it. Cesar Romero obviously didn't do it because they're not killing people in the 1960s television show. Ledger doesn't do it. Ledger's just an anarchist. Leto doesn't do it. Clearly, Phoenix didn't do it. But even the Gotham Jokers didn't do it, and you would think that would have been the best place for any of them to have done it.
Right.
was on that one. But yeah. I mentioned also Joker's origin of being the Red Hood, which gives us his transformation being because of a chemical reaction. That was in Detective Comics 168 from February 1951, where they tell the story about the Red Hood and how he dives into this, chemical waste to escape. And even though he thought the hood was protecting him, it did not, and it turned his skin white and his hair green and all of that. I found it weird I'm just running through the comic stuff that's connected to the movie here. In the very first again, I almost said it again, very first Detective Comics. In the very first Batman appearance in Detective Comics 27, they they deal with Apex Chemical. Mm-hmm. In this movie, they call the chemical company Axis. Right. And I'm just going, why not call it Apex? I don't know what the issue was there. So yeah, don't know why that had happened. And then when we get from that, we just get into obviously some of the inspiration. We talked about The Dark Knight Returns, which was actually being published while they were writing the movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so DC would actually send the writer would send Warner Brothers or whoever was in charge with the movie. DC was sending them black and white Xeroxes of the upcoming issues so that they could see what Miller was doing with The Dark Knight Returns while they were coming up with the idea for this, which is where we get there's a very famous cut scene of Batman riding a horse. And another thing that they did with The Dark Knight Returns is they finally explained why his bat symbol is yellow. Do y'all know this reason?
I don't
think so.
So the reason why the bat symbol is yellow, and it's really the loudest part of his suit. It's all black, but then yellow, is to divert the attention away from his face. So what do you think about that? Clark Kent has glasses.
From a law enforcement standpoint, it would stand to reason because his suit is, Kevlar body armor, whatever, and so drawing the attention away from the face to the chest would help him to be able to withstand bullets hitting him versus a bullet hitting him in the mouth, which would be a little painful. So from that standpoint, it makes perfect sense. I still don't know that explains why it has to be yellow. It could be white and still do the same thing. It could be neon green and do the same thing. But but from that perspective, the one part of him that's always uncovered and is vulnerable, if you were going to attack him and pick a vulnerable spot, it would be the mouth and just under the chin area. So you're drawing attention away from that to the chest. So works.
But you got to love that Bruce bet on a 8-inch by 4-inch area of his chest that the Joker was going to hit.
Right.
So
that was a strong silver tray.
Yeah, well, the Joker's henchmen have aim like stormtroopers too. So I don't know that any of that is ultimately that important.
All right. Of course, this also brought back Batman into, as we talked about, what Uslan wanted. Brought him back into the darkness, into the noir that Bill Finger and Bob Kane placed him in, because Bill Finger and Bob Kane's comics were more like pulp comics, detective comics. And the Batman that Bill Finger and Bob Kane created, Batman was violent. Batman murdered. I never understand the stigma of people saying Batman does not kill. Michael Keaton's Batman in this movie kills some of those thugs.
Right.
Especially when he's in the Batwing and he's blowing up the parade. Like, he is murdering some of those thugs.
Well, he drops bombs from the Batmobile, too, into the was it Axis Chemicals?
Oh, yeah.
At that point?
I mean, drops them right there in front of those thugs.
Yeah, exactly,
like, kills them on the spot.
Right.
Because it wasn't until Denny O'Neil in the 70s that's where you got the less murdery Batman. But then Frank Miller just said, screw that. And,
not going to work.
And brought So let's just talk about what are your thoughts about Burton, and it is Tim Burton. Mm-hmm. So what were your thoughts about Burton bringing Batman into this dark, gritty, of course not as gritty as Nolan would get, but this dark, gritty world?
I applauded it. So I was never a fan of the Batman TV show as a kid, and when it would come on, I would usually just and switch over and find some Schoolhouse Rock or something to watch and sing along to versus the Bam Pal.
I mean, you can sing na 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 na.
I know the theme song. Batman. The only version of that Batman that I enjoyed was the Scooby Doo "Where Are You?" where they would team up with the famous people, and there are a couple of those that have Batman and Robin on it.
Yeah.
And I liked those, which I believe is still voiced by by Adam West.
Adam West but Robin was Casey Kasem.
It was Casey Kasem, that's right.
Right.
Who was also
Shaggy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. The so going to the darker, that was the Batman that I was reading in the mid '80s in the Detective Comics and the Batman. It was a darker kind of character. The opening of this movie when he swoops in like a vampire on the two thugs. I knew right then I was going to like the movie because it wasn't the campiness and it was a darker character.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought, Tim Burton's style was already kind of dark anyway. I mean, coming off of Beetlejuice, he went from this to Edward Scissorhands. I mean, he definitely has a style. You didn't see it as much in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He had glimpses of it, but
Large Marge.
Yeah, I said glimpses. Yeah, but I think it fit. I mean, the story that he was telling, it matched the visuals that he used. I mean, I still enjoy it even now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff now that I think even I remember as maybe not the first time I watched it, but definitely multiple viewings on VHS. But like the model work, there's times you can tell it's a model besides something that's real. But the cuts are quick enough that you don't dwell on it too long. But but it was still
like Vicky and Batman swinging at the end.
Yeah. The obvious fake hand coming out of the water with Jack Napier turning into the Joker. But yeah, so I think this one, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not a huge fan of Beetlejuice. It's not one of my favorite movies. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. It was enjoyable as a kid. I don't have the same love for it a lot of other people do. So I can't really say I was a big Tim Burton fan until this movie. And then I was like, when I saw Tim Burton attached to something, it's like, oh, I want to see that movie because of Batman, not really from the other movies he'd done before that.
I agree with you completely, Tim. And I also was not a big Beetlejuice fan. My late wife, loved that movie. And anytime it came on, she was going to watch it. I would go in the other room and find something else to watch. It was just never that big. And I don't hate it or dislike it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I was just like, okay, I don't need to watch it. And same thing, I did not like Edward Scissorhands at all, but loved this movie. Burton's just really hit or miss for me. I even love the recent Wednesday TV show. With his involvement, I love that TV show as well. But very hit or miss. But for me, when I think of Tim Burton projects that I do like, this is Batman '89 is the top of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. And y'all were good with him going solid black pretty much on the suit? Other than the logo and the utility belt?
Yeah.
Because that was something that Miller didn't even do. I mean, Miller still had some contrast in the suit, even with his gray and black suit that he would don for Batman.
That was the story in 1989. The suit, the all black, and then the Batmobile as well was the other kind of iconic thing that people talked about and ultimately were excited about. But I was fine with the all black. You're the Dark Knight, and apparently that's the only time you come out at night or only time you come out is at night. So be in all black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's another thing we talked about the comic book adaptation, that instead of the what are you? And he says, I'm Batman. He's supposed to say, I am the Knight.
Right.
Like that apparently was the original script was I am the Knight, which of course, I mean, no one did that better than Kevin Conroy. You know, I am vengeance. I am the Knight. Yeah. I am Batman. Yeah. If anyone bests Michael Keaton, it's Kevin Conroy. It's just
the voice.
Yeah. Kevin Conroy's the voice. All right, a couple of things. You know, I love this movie. I'm not trying, but I always have to hit things that I didn't like. We of course already talked about Joker being the one that killed the Waynes. You were Tim. You were just talking about some of those kind of model shots. Mm-hmm. It still bothers me that first shot of Batman, and it's clearly a cartoon. Yeah.
There's a few cartoonish elements that are very evident, much more evident now in better quality versions than we probably noticed as a kid.
The cartoon spotlights at the end aren't that big of a deal for me. And the fact that the bat symbol waves when they show it,
right,
that doesn't bother me. But Batman looking like a ink blot,
right,
moving actually, on that rooftop.
There's actually times where I feel like it looks more like a cat walking back into the room than it does the Batman because of the ears and the cape. Yeah.
See, so that's one. What are your thoughts on those, Ron?
My thoughts are just that it's 1989.
Yeah, I get that, but
movie graphics.
I'm just like, I mean, yeah, his shot when you actually see Michael Keaton and he's holding up the cape and I mean, that's impressive. But yeah, that first shot when you see him from the rooftop and then he turns to walk away and that jerky animation that happens there, I'm not a fan. The other thing that puzzles me is in the final fight between the Joker and Batman. Batman does yell out, you killed my parents. Mm-hmm. He does yell that out. But then Joker's reply is, I was a kid when I killed your parents. And part of me goes, wait, does he know who he is? That's a very confusing line for me because he doesn't know he's Bruce Wayne. Right. He doesn't, even if he did know he was Bruce Wayne, does he remember that those were the Waynes that he killed? I have a problem with that line.
Well, if you take it in context of everything else, because he's doing you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, it's almost just like he's just saying whatever to get out of the situation.
That's a good point.
I didn't take it at full face value, but I see your point. But I also think everything else he says behind that is it's just ridiculous. He's just saying ridiculous things to get away,
which is kind of what the character does.
Yeah, exactly.
Traditionally,
yeah. So I'm not going to get in. I think we talked about this in your episode, so I'm not going to get into the whole Robin was supposed to be in the film and the plan with Robin and the scene with the horse riding Batman. But I do want to get into the fact that we've talked about the movie adaptation, but they did bring this storyline back in 2001. It was a 6-issue run called Batman 89. And it continued the storyline after Batman Returns. They completely ignored Forever and Batman and Robin, as they should. And they did Two-Face with the look of Billy D. Williams, and they continued that story. Do you think that that's something that... I mean, it was a popular storyline, but do you think that's something you guys would ever be interested in? Is actually going back and reading as to what maybe could have happened had Schumacher not taken over?
I'm definitely interested, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Well, then I recommend both of you go and read that. There's also Superman. There's also Superman 78, where they did the exact same thing. Okay. They continued the story after Superman 2, it completely ignoring 3 and 4.
As they should.
Yeah, again, as they should. I'll admit it, as they should.
We're not as interested in reading that.
But boo. Boo.
Are
he
you
inserts
offering
the
us,
knife slowly.
Are you offering to loan us the Batman issues to read? Is that what's happening here?
Well, I mean, I don't physically have them. I have a DC Universe Infinite account.
Okay, gotcha.
But I wanted to mention those to lead to this. So just a couple of months ago, in December of 2022, DC Comics officially acknowledged during their Dark Crisis event that they're going through that Michael Keaton's Batman takes place in Earth 789, which, if you're thinking about it, think of those numbers being put together, which causes it to actually now be in the same universe as Christopher Reeve's Superman. So Superman and Batman are from the same universe. Christopher Reeves, all of those fan-made Justice League videos showing Christopher Reeve and Michael Keaton together can happen now in the comics. I mean, is that not a dream come true for the people of our age?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. I mean, come on. We're all going to say bag it, but let's do it. It's part of the show anyway. Bag it, stack it, or trade it. Here we go. I will let Tim go first. What do you say?
Well, I was going to say...
Just say bag it. I was
going to say trade it and see... No, I'm just kidding. I'm definitely going to bag this one. I mean, come on. It's Batman 89. I have the comic book adaptation of the movie, which I had as a kid after seeing the movie. This is probably the first comic book adaptation that I bought. And I lost it at some point. And actually, I was with Ron. I think when I found the copy I have now, we were at a comic convention. And I was so excited to find it. And so yeah. So I literally have this movie as a comic book that I will not trade.
Definitely bag it. I mean, Superman... 78?
Mm-hmm.
Is that Superman? Yep. Showed us that a man could fly. Batman 89, takes that genre. Huge box office success. Huge marketing and merchandise success of this movie. And the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe success that we have now are, all the homage and perks to these two grandparents of their genre. So yeah, absolutely bag. I've probably seen this movie easily. I'd say probably 25 times. I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
Now it's been 30 plus or whatever years, and I started off with 4 times right in the summer of 1989, so I had a good start. But I do remember showing it to my daughter when she was young, and she loves the Marvel movies and Harry Potter and all that stuff. She was not impressed with this. She was just like, okay, all right.
Yeah, obviously bag it. Yeah, I mean, I was right there with you. I put it in my notes, kind of the same thing you're saying, Ron. Yeah, Superman 78 was the seed that was planted for the superhero genre film. Yeah. And then it went through some rough stuff. I mean, Tim and I just talked about Howard the Duck. And we talked about all those other movies that came out in the 80s, because this was like the last one. Like this was June of 89. So it took all those other comic book movies that were, weren't quite working. And then finally you get Batman 89. That was the plant food, the water, whatever you want to call it, that that seed needed.
Fertilizer.
Yeah. Well, no, all the stuff before it were fertilizer.
This was the Miracle Grow.
Yeah. So it finally got it start growing, and then we get a lot more growth in the 90s, and then it almost took the entire 90s until we got Blade, which many people will say was the true
Kickstarter,
launching point for what came after that. But yeah, again, Superman and Batman, first 2 comic book superhero icons. And then they followed it up by doing the same thing with the movies and being, as Ron said, the grandfathers or the godfathers of these movies. And you know what? I love too that Superman 78 came out 40 years after Action Comics #1. Batman 89 came out 50 years after Detective Comics 27. So they were great anniversary for both of those characters, for the 40th and the 50th celebration, and we're very excited to see Michael Keaton return please be a good movie. Yes. Please be a good movie. Please be a good movie.
Right.
We know that James Gunn's now in and is going to making all these big changes to DC. And so this may be a one and done for Michael Keaton's Batman. So just please be a good movie. That's all I ask. But we'll go ahead and end it here. Follow all of our shows. Tim, with the 80s Flick Flashback, you got anything coming up you want to talk about?
As we get into March, I'm actually doing something a little different, which will be kind of fun. So like this, I'm guesting on someone else's podcast. I'm actually going to be replaying some episodes from other podcasts I've been part of. One being Laramy and I talking about Swamp Thing, which we actually mentioned in this episode. And then I was on another show called Totally Rad Christmas, where we talked about Lethal Weapon. And on another podcast called Retro Life for You, we talked about Predator. So 3 fun movies to talk about in March on another format. Hey. So
you and I talked about Predator.
We did on my episode, yeah. So yeah, actually the only one that I'm actually playing that we didn't cover on my episode is Swamp Thing. So if you missed any of those when I guested on those, I'm going to kind of be featuring those in the month of March. And then I'm really excited about the summer of sequels, where we're gonna talk about sequels from movies we've already covered already. So we're doing Ghostbusters 2, Lethal Weapon 2, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Return of the Jedi, just to name a few. So very excited about what's coming up in the summer.
Very nice. Ron, you're going to be at a grocery store or somewhere that someone...
I'll be at MegaCon walking around sometime in late March down in Orlando.
There you go.
I'll send you some photos.
Exciting. And of course, we're getting into March for us, where we're going to be talking about Ghost Rider. Tim's actually going to come back to handle one of those episodes. So we're looking forward to that. And then I'm gearing up for May into June. I think I even roll into July to tackle all of the death and return of Superman for the 30th anniversary. Even though the storyline started in 92, so technically the 30th anniversary began in November, December of last year. Really, the storyline hit its groove and all that in 93. So I am counting this as the 30th anniversary. So I'm excited about all of that. But we'll go ahead and end it today. Rate and review the show. Get us out there and let people know how much you love shows like this, so that we can keep it going. But for today, Ron and Tim, thank you both for joining me on this as we talked about what we considered the greatest comic book movie of the 80s.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the invite, sir. Looking forward to the next time.
Yep.
Oh, excited for all of it. All right, thank you everybody for joining me for today for Moving Panels. I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
As my plastic surgeon always says, if you're going to go with a smile.